Karen Whiting writes to help families thrive and let moms know she understands their struggles and help them rejoice in the joys. Well, she relates to moms because she herself is a mom of 5, including 2 rocket scientists and a grandmother. She enjoys adventures like camel riding in the Canary Islands, whitewater rafting in Australia, and scuba diving off Bermuda's coast. She's a certified writing and marketing coach, an international speaker, a former television host, and award-winning author of 27 books for women, children, military, and families. Her latest book is Growing a Mother's Heart, Devotions of Faith, Hope, and Love from Mothers Past, Present, and Future. Karen, you are one of my favorite interviews. Thank you for coming back to At the Library.
Oh, Diane, I always enjoy being on with you. It's just such a pleasure.
Well, you are just such an inspiration because I have said this before. You are just one of the most prolific writers I have ever met. 27 books now, and I'm sure you've got 2 or 3 more in the works, right?
Yes, by the end of the year, I'll have 3 more books out.
Wow, that is amazing. Well, I was just telling a friend of mine about you, and I said, you know, you are just the greatest idea person I have ever met. It's like ideas just ooze out of you. And it doesn't matter if it's related to writing or parenting or what. You just are full of ideas, and it has just been such a joy to know you for several years now. Tell me about this new book, Growing a Mother's Heart, and I want you to just tell us why you wrote this book and what it's about.
Well, that's a lot to answer. Okay. There's 180 devotions. It's 30 weeks of devotions, 6 days each week. And I wanted to weave in some historic moms because we should have the perspective that we think everything is unique to us as moms, and for us it's unique. But since Eve, we've had some of the same problems that keep coming up with our own children, our very similar struggles, even if the times change. So I wanted to put in that perspective as well as biblical moms, who are historic moms also. And I wanted to weave in a little bit of humor by putting in those sweet and funny little things that children say about moms and being mothers. The reason I wrote the book is I always want to help families thrive. I grew up in a family that not only did it thrive, but our families all the way back to the 1600s in my home state, Connecticut, had very good, intact, wholesome, faith-filled families. And a lot of people don't have that model. They've grown up in dysfunction, and I just want to share the model of what it's like to be in a family that overcomes those struggles, rejoices in the joys, and thrive.
Well, yes, you have had you really had a very unusual upbringing. Didn't I read that you grew up in a small dairy farming town in Connecticut?
My family founded that region of the state in the 1630s. I can't even list how many relatives I had around me.
Oh,
there were so many. Across the street was one of the dairy farms the owners of that were related to both my mother's and father's sides of the family.
Well, you had a great upbringing yourself, and so and then you had great family life with your husband, a member of the Coast Guard, and you all lived in many places, and then with the 5 children. I remember you told me once that how much you enjoyed just sitting on the floor and playing with your children, and so now you're a grandmother and you're still doing the same thing.
Yes, I do. I just spent a week with some of my grandchildren in in North Carolina. I have grandchildren in Tennessee also.
Okay. Well, let's talk some more about I noticed that you have stories, as you say in the title, Mothers from the Past, Present, and Future. And so I noticed that you have Mary, the mother of Jesus, Linda Evans Shepherd, a good friend of both of us, and the founder of the Advanced Writers and Speakers Association. You also talk about Eve and Noah's wife, and Sarah, the wife of Abraham. Tell me about how you chose some of these women and what some of their stories are about.
Actually, what I first chose were the themes that I wanted to talk about for moms. I wanted to make sure I covered the struggles and the joys, and then with each one, I looked and said, now, where does that fit in with the moms in history, the moms in the Bible? And I chose them because of that. Eve obviously relates very well to the birth of a new baby because she was the first mom. She didn't even have other moms to compare herself to. She had no one to say, so when will this one walk?
So then again, what about like Mary, the mother of Jesus? Tell us why you included her.
I really included her because of her struggle when she lost her son.
Yes.
That's such a panicking situation for a mother. I've done it. I've left a child behind when I didn't mean to, and that's just such a panic. And to know that I'm not a total failure because you feel like, how could I do this? I'm such a failure as a mom. To realize that Mary did that, we can feel like, okay, I'm not so bad. I'm not the only one who's ever done this.
Right. Yes, that I think that's one thing that always encouraged me as my children were growing up, to talk with other moms and to know I'm not the only one who did it wrong, and that it's not going to be a fatal mistake. I always thought my kids would grow up being emotionally disturbed because I was such a terrible mother. And so I think we're very, very much too hard on ourselves. Don't you think so?
Oh, I think so. And that's why we need the support and girlfriends who are moms. We need to be with them because it reminds us that we're okay, that we may feel like we're just sinking in the muck of life, and we realize that they're right there with us.
Yes.
They understand, they get us.
Yes, yes. Well, you tell some of the sweetest stories, and I noticed one of them you told about when your husband was away on duty and you were home with the children, and I think it was Hurricane Andrew that passed through Florida, right? And you and the children were huddled in the closet. Tell us that story.
Yes. We were told to stay home for our zip code because the storm would not hit us, and there were only so many roads to evacuate South Florida. So we stayed home, and the storm took a turn in the middle of the night. Now, I had still had the children prepare, bring everything in from outside, put the canoe on top of Dad's car in the garage, and because it was the only place to fit it, and things like this. And as I was still preparing, and it was getting later and later, I looked out, and the gumbo, they're actually called Taurus trees also, the gumbo limbo trees, were bending in half, and the diameter of those is like an oak tree. And I thought, we are getting hit. We are really getting hit. Grabbed all the children and had them come to my closet, which was 12 by 12 feet. It was a huge closet that we didn't expect when we were having the house built. They didn't put dimensions in that. But they were able to bring in mattresses, lay down, and I started reading off and on during the night whenever we woke up. About 5 in the morning, I finally read Jesus Calming the Storm. And each time I read something, I prayed. And when I prayed that time, I asked for Jesus to calm the storm, and everything stopped. All the noise, the wind, everything crashing against the house stopped. And we were silent for a couple of minutes when my son in the back of the closet, my oldest one, Michael, piped up and said, "Mom, you should have read that one first."
That would have saved a lot of storm damage, wouldn't it?
That's right. Humor is what we need when we're in the middle of a disaster. And the kids just pitched right in. Even Daniel, who was only 2.5 years old, I put boots on him, or water shoes, I guess, and gave him a bucket, opened a window, and I had him bailing out the sunken living room that was really sunk underwater.
Oh, wow. Back to the book. I love the way you have it laid out. You have got, you have these stories and then you have mom steps. And I just made a note of several of those. One, turn grumbling around with gratitude and praise. Tell us how to do that, because all us moms are familiar with grumbling children. We tell them something to do and they grumble, or they just have a tendency to grumble. So how do you turn grumbling into gratitude and praise?
Well, first, the mom has to turn that off, because it's so easy as a mom to complain and think, oh, why don't they just do it when I ask them the first time? Okay, we just think that. We sometimes say that.
Yes.
And that starts with our getting up in the morning and praising God and thanking Him for the day. And then when I start hearing all the grumbling, it's great to just pause. Darlene, that I write about in that book, she calls out, "What day is this?" And the children all have to yell out, "This is the day the Lord has made." And she goes, "And what should we do?" "Be glad and rejoice in it," they call back. And that's the call for them to gather together, grab their Bibles, and they gather around her, and they start sharing something they have each read recently in the Bible, and they turn their focus back to God and back to the goodness of God and the blessings of God. And then they can, when they're done with that, they separate back out to what they want to do or their schoolwork, whatever they're doing, because they're homeschooled, and they are just running so much more smoothly, and they're not complaining or grumbling.
Well, you're making it sound like moms can actually enjoy their children. Really? What a foreign thought.
We can, but if you notice, Mom had to yell out first a positive thing and gather them together so that they would. And part of that is children, when they start grumbling, often need attention. They might need a snack. In fact, I think Darlene usually ends that with a snack time, and then they get back to work. So they know we're going to come together, we're going to feel better, and then we're going to eat something.
Okay. Well, food makes everything better, doesn't it? Well, another one of the mom steps you had was showing mercy. I thought that was a very good point. Tell us something about showing mercy to your children. Tell us how important that is in a family.
Showing mercy, to me, goes a little bit beyond forgiveness. It's great to forgive, and we should always forgive our children and make sure that we apologize and ask for forgiveness if we have done something.
Right.
But mercy goes beyond that to kind of wipe things out and show that God has mercy when we definitely don't deserve that. One of the stories in the book about mercy is when a friend of mine, her children had done everything wrong, and they left the house a mess. She came home to it late at night, exhausted, and she even thought about getting them up during the night to make them redo everything. And instead, she just felt God's mercy on her, and she baked a cake. And she decorated it and put it in the center of the table. And when everyone got up the next day, they looked around and said, am I going to have to miss the party because I didn't do my job? And she said, well, just wait a little bit. And when everyone had asked the same question, she sat them down and said, do any of you deserve this? And basically they said no. And she said, well, I don't really deserve it either because I was so angry at all of you. And I want to show you mercy because God has shown me mercy. And she let everyone have a party, after which they each said, we're going to go do that work now. And they did.
Oh, what a sweet story. Yes. Well, I know the book also has prayers, and I love when we have prayers that we can just read, Of course, all of us pray throughout the day, but it's always good to just have a prayer that you could read for a specific situation. And then you also include in your book, Growing a Mother's Heart, wisdom from future moms. Tell us about this.
Yes, I do. I collected these little sayings that children naturally say, such as, Mommy, tuck me in so I feel like I'm stuffed in a soft taco shell.
Oh, tell us the sweet story about the little child whose mom gave him a kiss, and then she thought he wiped it away.
Oh, that's one of my stories. And my youngest son, I had 5 children. The youngest one, he's 2 years old at the time, and I gave him a kiss to go before he was going off with his older sister for the day. And he turned away, and he wiped off the kiss and brushed it on his chest. And I thought, oh, he's getting too big for me and for my kisses. And he whipped around, looked up at me, and said, Mom, do you know what I did? And I thought, how can I say what I think he did? So I bent down, looked him in the eyes, and said, what did you do? I also wanted to hear his thoughts on what he did. And he looked up and he said, I took your kiss and I put it in my heart today. So if I'm sad or mad, I'll just take it out and I'll be okay.